Riding in on the winds of a breeze, Disney have sent us our first full trailer for their upcoming fantasy film, Mary Poppins Returns, the sequel to the 1964 Walt Disney classic musical, Mary Poppins. Loaded with references, Easter eggs, and cameos, as an enormous fan of Mary Poppins, I've scoured the trailer in my best efforts to break it all down for you and present it in this one handy little guide. I did of course do a small trailer reaction earlier today. If you'd like to check that out, make sure you click through the hyperlink at the end of the video. Mary Poppins Returns is set sometime in the 1930s, roughly 20 years after the first movie. Though all this time later, Cherry Tree Lane, the home of the Bankses, looks very much the same as it always did. For the very first time, we are treated with a beautiful panoramic shot of the entire street, likely a set on the Disney lot as the original street was. Due to the original set being built inside of a studio, however, and with very limited technological ability outside matte paintings to extend buildings on screen, Cherry Tree Lane was never quite shown like this in the original movie. It's very exciting to see that the ship is still on the roof of the Banks' neighbour's house. Of course, in the original movie we are shown that this is the house of Admiral Boom and Mr. Binnacle, two friendly old retired Navy men who fire a cannon from the roof twice every day and keep watch over the neighbourhood. It's unknown at this point whether Boom and Binnacle still inhabit the house during Mary Poppins Returns, but I find it hard to believe that these two, who are at least 80 in the original, would still be alive. Perhaps it's been kept by new owners as a landmark. Also interesting to note that the house has changed from a blue to a cream colour sometime in the 20-year time span. From the very top, the trailer presents us with Emily Mortimer and Ben Whishaw portraying older versions of Jane and Michael Banks, who were of course the two children in the first movie who Mary Poppins comes to look after. Early in the trailer, Jane and Michael are rummaging through an attic where firstly, Michael finds an old snow globe with St. Paul's Cathedral inside of it. While Michael questions why they kept all of this stuff, we of course know that this snow globe is quite important, as it is the one that Mary Poppins presents to the children in the original movie during the Feed the Birds musical sequence. The design on both pieces is slightly different from movie to movie, likely due to artistic licensing for the new one, but it is without a doubt supposed to be the exact same one. Next, Michael pulls a kite out of the attic which he simply discards, throwing it in the trash outside. The kite magically flies away, but finds itself in the hands of a new owner, Michael's own son. This kite, likewise, is not as unimportant as Michael may make it seem, as it is the kite which appeared in the original movie. When we are first introduced to the Banks children in the original, they have been flying a kite alone, and after a gust of wind blows it away, are found wandering around looking for it by a constable and brought back to the Banks house. The kite being broken, Mr. Banks refuses to fix it, as he always refuses to fly it with the children. The kite is quite symbolic in the original movie, representing not only Mr. Banks as a character, but the relationship that he has with his children. Mr. Banks does of course fly the kite with the children at the end of the movie during the Let's Go Fly a Kite musical sequence, after Mary Poppins has shown him the value of his life and taught him to love his role as the head of the household. As the Bankses fly their kite, the wind changes, signaling Mary Poppins' departure from the house. As you remember, Mary both comes and goes from people's lives with the changing of the winds. Firstly, it's interesting to note that Jane mentions that they used to love flying the kite with their mother and father, implying to me that after the events of Mary Poppins, Mr. Banks remained a changed man and continued to spend time flying the kite with his children. I really love this thought, as it means that Mr. Banks' fantastic character arc has been unchanged for the new movie. It's also interesting to note that when the kite is flown by Michael's son, it once again signals a change of wind and ushers Mary Poppins back into the life of the Banks family. It's almost like this kite is sentient and has an active role in the changing of the winds, both signaling Mary Poppins' arrival and departure in the first movie and signaling her arrival in the new one. I just love little things like this. Of course, the arrival of Mary in the new trailer is reminiscent of her arrival in the original movie, though of course made quite a bit more spectacular with the addition of modern special effects. When Mary enters the Banks family house, she is of course met with shock. Jane exclaims, "Mary Poppins, you came back." While this may be a general exclamation, it's also a clear reference to the title of the original Mary Poppins sequel novel, Mary Poppins Comes Back. While Mary Poppins Returns pretty much means the same thing, I do wish the movie had retained the original Mary Poppins Comes Back title. It just seems a little bit more magical. Also worth noting here that in the trailer for this movie, Poppins flies in on a kite just as she does in the original sequel novel, while in the original novel and original movie, she flies in under her umbrella. We do see a shot of Mary flying with her umbrella in this trailer, which I'm guessing is a shot from the final sequence of the movie where Mary flies away. Of course, Mary Poppins, not having aged a day, still carries around that magical umbrella with her, the same one with the parrot head on the end from the original movie, and also carries her magic bottomless handbag. Again, the handbag has a slightly different design, but it's the same. Mary's costume in this scene is also very reminiscent of what she wore when she first met the Banks family in the original, and the bird on her hat may in fact be a reference to the sequence where she sings with a robin. In one quick shot here, Mary is wearing a gorgeous dapper outfit, and while not exactly similar to anything she wore in the original, it does feel somewhat reminiscent of Bert's dapper jacket in the fantasy sequence. The short gag where Mary looks at herself in the mirror and her reflection moves independently is another charming recreation of one of the gags from the original where, well, the same thing happens basically. Mary is also seen singing the Banks children to sleep, where we get to hear our first lines from a brand new song by Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman. Of course, this is also a direct nod to, again, the Feed the Bird sequence in the original movie where Mary sings Jane and Michael to sleep. Towards the end of the trailer, we get a little glimpse at a musical dance number featuring a number of lamplighters dancing around lampposts. This seems incredibly reminiscent of the Step in Time musical number with the chimney sweeps in the original. It's not exactly the same, but incorporates a lot of similar visual iconography, and the overall colorscape of the scene is also very similar. In a world before CGI, the original movie of course relied on groundbreaking practical visual effects for all of its magic in the live action sequences. It's great to see in a couple of sequences in this trailer that visual effects are once again being used to bring that same magic to the new movie, paying respectful homage to Walt's original classic and also making the movie feel visually and stylistically similar and familiar. One of the most iconic sequences of the original movie was the one where Mary and Bert jump into the pavement paintings and into an incredible, fantastical world which used groundbreaking techniques to combine live action and traditional animation. Of course, Mary Poppins Returns would not be complete without its own fantasy sequence, which we are given a very small glance at in the trailer. This sequence will mark the very first time traditional animation has appeared in a Disney feature since Winnie the Pooh in 2011. I'm incredibly happy that traditional animation has been used in this sequence instead of CGI animation, and I'm truly hoping that if this receives a great reaction, Disney may reconsider more fully traditionally animated movies in the future. I do, however, love that a little bit of CG animation is blended in too. It gives the movie a modern edge and makes it go to places that were never possible in the original. I think this sequence looks so beautiful and charming, and again, gives me those same magical feels as the classic movie. Again, similar and familiar. In this sequence, we see the return of the waiter penguins, who of course dance with Mary and Bert in the original. We also get a glimpse of a story about Nellie Rubina, who was a character in the original Poppins novels. And this sequence with floating papers reminds me not of Mary Poppins, but of Harry Potter, which, much like the original Poppins, was also a groundbreaking magical fantasy film for its time. At the end of the trailer, we are given a roll call of all of the main and supporting cast in the movie, and it reminds me very much of classic movie trailers, and I feel like it gives even the trailer a beautifully vintage edge. In fact, this roll call is even quite reminiscent of the original Mary Poppins trailer from 1964, which used the same technique. A number of incredibly famous faces turn up in this roll call, most of which I assume will appear in cameos. This again is a nod to the original movie, whose cast was littered with cameos by some of the time's most well-known movie stars, including Disney favourite Ed Wynn. Julie Walters will appear in the movie as Ellen, one of the Banks' housemaids who not only appeared in the original novels, but also in the original movie portrayed by Hermione Baddeley. Colin Firth will appear as William Witherell Wilkins, said to be the current bank chair at the Fidelity Fiduciary Bank where Mr. Banks used to work. And Meryl Streep will appear as Topsy Turvy, the eccentric cousin of Mary Poppins, who too appeared in many of the books. While her name doesn't appear on the roll call, Angela Lansbury makes a surprise appearance in the trailer as Balloon Lady, again another regular character in the novels. Though Lansbury did not appear in the original Mary Poppins, she did appear in Disney's 1971 classic Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which, due to its similarities to Poppins, such as the combination of animation and live action, and its use of Sherman Brothers songs, it is considered by many Disney fans as a spiritual sequel to Mary Poppins, and was in fact originally planned as an alternate project to Poppins if the studio weren't able to gain the rights in the early 1960s. While Lansbury is probably best known by current Disney fans as the voice of Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast, it's her involvement in Broomsticks that makes her appearance so special here. The great Dick Van Dyke appears very briefly in this trailer too, as the only original cast member from the original movie to appear in this one. Van Dyke is of course best known for portraying Bert in the original, but he also played a second character, which was of course Mr. Dores Senior, the chairman of the bank. And while Van Dyke's character in Returns appears to look very similar to Mr. Dores Senior, he is in fact portraying his son, Mr. Dores Jr., who also appears in the original movie, portrayed by Arthur Mallet. If you remember the original, it was said that Mr. Dores Senior actually passed away after laughing too hard at a joke told to him by Mr. Banks. I think Van Dyke looks fantastic here. It's quite remarkable how the 1960s makeup looks so much like the real-life old man Van Dyke, even when you take away the fake beard and hairpiece. It's really great to see Van Dyke get a new song and dance sequence in this one, and for a 93-year-old man, he still looks incredibly spry. Van Dyke has still got it. Finally, Lin-Manuel Miranda will appear as Jack, a street lamplighter who seems to be the fill-in for Van Dyke's Bert. He is even complete with an incredibly average Cockney accent, which can surely only be a reference to the fact that Van Dyke's Cockney accent in the original is highly regarded as one of cinema's worst accents of all time.
The constable is responsible. Now how does that sound?
And with that, that is all from me on the Mary Poppins trailer. Did you spot anything else that I might have missed? If so, let me know down in the comments below, or simply let me know what you think about the trailer and the upcoming movie. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos, you like what you've seen, you'd like to see more like this in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen right now, and also hit that like button down below if you're feeling extra generous. Also, don't forget to check out my many social media accounts, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.